Blended Podcasts. Brought to you by Blended Audio.
So I found myself just thinking deeply about how often we can actually bring a producer in to, not to produce the episodes, but just having as a guest. But then the last time we tried that, every single time, this oak was just like, I don't want to do it. Oh, we're rolling. Oh, shit. Welcome to SoundVaaibs episode, where are we? 22. Episode 22. I'm Nate. I don't have notes in front of me, but I'm Nate, and this is Paddy McD.
I'm really glad you know you're Nate and I'm Paddy McD.
That's all I know today. So apparently...
Should have brought some notes, Nate.
We should have brought someone else in, a guest or something.
Yeah. But there's a good reason why we haven't.
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to tell me what that is?
Yeah, it's basically today's topic.
Oh, people that don't come to the party.
Yeah.
Is that it?
People who don't come to the party.
All right, well, look, guys, for the most part, today's episode and probably next week's episode and the week after that, we have made a collective decision, haven't we?
Yes.
That we are just going to, off the cuff, and just leave it to our banter and to our general discussion that we have in the car, and now we're just going to bring it to you guys.
Yeah, because what we realized is driving here is actually the podcast.
Yeah, we'll have a full-on conversation, and it will actually be why aren't people listening to us?
Yeah, so what we're going to be doing from now on is we're going to be driving here in silence.
Yes.
And save the good stuff for when the mics are turned on.
So, what good stuff do we have today? What are we talking about?
Well, first of all, we're going to say, welcome to SoundVaaibs!
I did that already.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
When?
5 minutes ago.
Yeah, before the mics were rolling.
No, the mics were rolling.
All right, we'll see when we listen back.
No, they were rolling. Where the hell were you? Were you not just sitting here listening to me? And he was like, we were rolling. I'm like, yeah. And then I just, low-key, was just talking about how our producer didn't want to come and sit with us today because he doesn't like us.
Anyways, welcome to SoundVaaibs, everybody.
Welcome. Officially, welcome to SoundVaaibs.
Yeah.
We just spent 5 minutes talking shit about an intro.
Yeah. So what we're going to be chatting about today is, as those of you who've been listening to us well know, we both play in bands.
No, we don't.
Uh-huh.
No, we don't. We don't play in bands. We sacrifice our time and our effort and our energy in bands.
Yes. All right, so we both slave in bands.
We don't play, bro. We don't play no games here.
Yeah. Well, I guess therein lies the point. What's the difference between work and play?
Exactly. There's a very grey area there of sorts.
So we're going to be talking about band relationship dynamics.
Oh, boy. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get in so much trouble.
I think we're already in trouble.
Maybe you more than me at this stage, but by the end of this episode, I'm pretty screwed. I may as well just leave the band.
It's assuming you have a band left to go back to.
Yeah, this is
for
true.
both of us.
Yeah. After this, we'll just start our own project.
Anyways, guys, we're going to be talking about, so we've both been playing music for a while with and music is a team effort for the most part. Not always, but for the most part.
Yeah, for the most part.
And what we've found is not only among ourselves, but among many of our peers as well. One of the big questions about band life is longevity.
Yes.
And the fact that in many cases, that word is it's not part of the vocabulary. It's a lot of bands don't last very long, let's face it. And the big question is, well, why? And it could be that they just don't get traction with what they're doing. But oftentimes, I think a lot of people go into a band situation with expectations beyond what they then experience.
Well, I suppose a lot of people jump into things with a very ambitious mindset.
Yeah.
And they sort of don't check themselves and they leave the realism at the door.
Yeah.
And then they just walk into this thing thinking that, we're going to do this song and it's going to sound fantastic, and then
everyone's going to love it.
Everyone's going to love the things that we do because...
And we're going to make money
and
tour the world.
Really? In this country? Sheesh.
Yeah.
In what we do, that's a tall order.
Yeah.
Like when you are in a band that is somewhat of a niche genre, or I remember the conversation just before we went and started recording ourselves talking into microphones. You were saying, we just paint ourselves into a corner and we just explore the world from that corner as far as we can reach. And a lot of bands do that inadvertently, and they still come out with this ambition and this expectation of, now the world's going to love it, and our demographic's going to reach to 38 something countries, thanks Spotify stats. And then, everyone's going to listen to it, and we're going to make some kiff money, and, the drummer's not going to be mad that I broke his snare.
yeah, exactly. So it comes back down to band relationship dynamics. So we have expectations, and sometimes those expectations aren't exactly met. And I think the question that comes into play then is, how does each individual who's part of this team, how do they respond to those expectations not being met in their personal capacity, and how does that impact throughout the 4 or 5 people who are typically part of that band? And you get things like tension and conflict, and in these things you need resolution.
Yes, which is very, very difficult to achieve when one out of your 5 or however many members you have is got this sort of disparity about them.
Yeah.
I can speak from experience in that regard. Like I started many projects that just failed from the start.
Yeah.
And then the one project that actually was somewhat successful in a sense, I had a lot of that ambition. So I can fully relate to this. And a lot of those guys had been in bands before. As you said, bands that didn't last very long. A friend of mine calls it the curse of Cape Town.
The Curse of Cape Town,
yeah. When a band releases one album.
Yeah.
And then they break up.
Yes. But I think that ties in with the expectations.
Exactly.
I think a lot of people actually tolerate each other because they believe that soon things are going to become wonderful. And they often think that, but the release of an album will change everything.
No, it'll give you content, but if you're not pushing that content, then you're not going to get anywhere near that potential growth or whatever that you expect, or that you really shouldn't expect. Expectation from my end, now that I've learned, I've burnt and I've learned that your expectation shouldn't be everyone's gonna listen to this. Your expectation should be, right, now that we have this product, we need to now explore and exploit every single opportunity and every single channel we can to get as much coverage on that as possible. And that's a section of quote-unquote band business that often gets overlooked.
Yeah.
And if one person in your group is feeling what's the word? They're feeling down and out about an expectation that they had and just never met it. That pulls the whole group down. And if you are unaware of that, then you're just being stupid. Like straight up. Like you need to be aware of these things. And I don't care if you play a minimal role, you're still playing a role. And if you're playing a role in a project, you have a set responsibility. And it's not just to play your instrument. There are other things that come with it. But this conversation can unpack for days.
Yeah. Well, I think let's, for our listeners' benefit, it's like, what are we going to sit here and talk about? Are we going to basically just, weep about our past experiences?
Let me weep, Pat.
Or are we going to try and paint a path forward where it's like, all right, we understand this about relationship dynamics. What can we do to mitigate certain issues which we know come up in band life?
Kick them all out. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Please.
So I think from my point of view, it's like what I'd like to try and achieve is say, all right, as band life let's say you are getting involved in band life and it's early days for you, and you've started to see, but this is not smooth sailing, not necessarily as far as the work goes, but as far as the people goes, like the people who you're working with. This is not necessarily smooth sailing.
Yeah.
What actions can you as an individual take to mitigate some of the tensions and issues that might arise?
Set boundaries from the beginning.
Uh-huh.
And when I say boundaries, I mean set conversational boundaries with regards to the direction of the project.
Uh-huh.
Establish a mutual direction.
Mm-hmm.
Ensure that everybody is on board. And if they're not on board, then compromise and discuss. Mm-hmm. Open communication in any situation is key.
Yeah.
Regardless of if it's banned or not.
Yeah.
If it's the human element that you're worried about, you need to do things that are conducive to benefiting a human being.
Yes.
You're not trying to benefit your project. You're trying to benefit the human being. Because if the human being isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing because they're down and out,
one has to understand why they're down and out.
Exactly. And if they are at a point where, but I'm just not feeling it, guys, because we did this and this, and it took so much, and now we're just sitting here in this point, and then someone has to step up and be like, listen, bro, this is going to be a long journey. This is not just going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
This is not going to happen over a year, not the first 3 years.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, you'll have a hit.
Or let's be honest, this is not going to happen at the first album.
No,
this is going to happen at maybe album 4 or 5.
Well, in some cases, yes.
And that's much more than 3 years.
Look, from what I gather, there are special cases where one album is really, really good in a sense of here's a hypothetical example. You've put together a group of people that are well-versed, well-established musicians, well-respected, well-known. Like people say for example, what's that dude from Oh God? Stefan. Take Stefan for example. He may or may not be listening right now. But take for example, someone spots him in like a band dynamic of people. Say you're at a show and you had a conversation with him, and Oh God's now on hiatus. They're gonna plan a tour for later, but for now they're just taking a breather. Someone wants to now start a supergroup. Cool. So supergroup entails you get a whole bunch of guys that are really well known, you put them together and you make some magic. I know of a band that did that. Not necessarily a band from here, but a band from, I think it was from the States. They got together and they made the supergroup of really well established guys, and they covered a song from the Cranberries. I don't know if I've spoken about this before because it's a really cool story. Everyone knows that song Zombie. Zombie. Yeah, exactly. Everyone knows that song. So now these guys did a cover of Zombie, and it was so well done. It was so well put together. And these guys are like, they're metal. They're pretty, it's a metal band. And this cover was metal, but it was almost commercially accepted metal, where the vocalist wasn't like inaudible to a casual listener, because you know how that goes. And it was so well done that it actually caught the attention of the singer from the Cranberries before she passed away, rest in peace. And she was actually scheduled to go into studio with them after she heard it, to go and record vocals on the cover.
Yeah.
Because she liked it so much.
Yeah.
And on the day that she was supposed to go into studio, that's when she passed away.
Night.
However, my point is, they took that very, very popular track, they put their own spin on it, and it sounded fantastic. And they released it on their first release, their first album. That thing, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, someone, but that thing went double platinum. And it was put on their album. The rest of the album was pretty heavy. It was still
So that was the foot in the door.
Yeah,
that was the strategic.
That's it. Strategy. It was very strategic. And the release of that first album, the crowd ate it up. They got to listen to all the other stuff, which gave them more exposure. A lot of the other tracks did also really well. And now they are touring relentlessly. They've released a second album like not even a year later. And they're doing really, really, really well. Now that was strategy executed by, yes, you had the the advantage of having well-known guys.
Mm-hmm.
Now, say I start a group now, I pull Stefan, I pull this oak, I pull that oak, I pull that oak, and we do something.
What about me?
No, maybe. You don't have time, bro.
Yeah, that's also true.
You're a busy guy. So we put together a super group and we release something, but we don't record it, produce it, mix, master, whatever, and then just release. We sit and we discuss. We have open communication in the band, and you keep that open communication going, and you don't stop with that. That needs to be a consistent thing. If there's a breakdown in that, naturally, later down the line, if something does go wrong, no one's talking about it. Everyone's quiet. Now there's an uncertainty. Now there's this. Now there's that. Like, Stefan's now got a problem, right? Like we've now released something prematurely. We haven't put effort into it, like the correct business side of it into it. He's got a problem. He comes to me and he goes, man, I'm just not feeling it.
Yeah.
You know, that now demoralizes me.
Yeah.
Now I'm also now leader of this whole thing. So now I'm
daddy.
I'm driving.
Yeah.
They are all following. I'm driving, but we're making it work to a point. But for him, he's now experienced past success with his previous band,
which is not being replicated here.
It's not being replicated. Now he's got a problem. Now he only comes to me. He doesn't speak to the rest of everybody else.
Yeah.
Then therein lies another problem. Like, because you're only communicating to one oak when it needs to be a group effort.
Yeah.
So, bottom line is, first and foremost, one of the best ways to mitigate future problems, like you mentioned before, is create that open communication and ensure that everybody is on the same page all the time.
Well, I don't know, hey? Like, I don't know if that actually... I mean, I'm not saying your point of view doesn't have merit, but I mean, sometimes you find that an individual prefers to come to, whoever designated band daddy is. In your own bands, you'll know who's band daddy. Someone might choose to rather isolate their whatever issue they're having because they don't want to demoralize everybody. Maybe they're hoping to find some consolement from an individual, some encouragement, motivation. If they blurt that out in the space of everybody, maybe you find it catches like wildfire and everyone's like, yeah, no, we're over this. And sometimes that's not the outcome they're looking for,
I suppose.
So I think when it comes to, let's kind of unpack the sort of title again of this show is like band relationship dynamics.
Yeah, band relationship.
Yeah. Now, when you enter into a band, you are entering into a certain kind of relationship, and it's a complex relationship.
Of course, yeah.
Because to some extent, it's going to be intimate in the sense of your human interactions. Like, I don't mean like, sexually intimate. It's not like the same as with
this ain't that kind of podcast.
Yeah. No, but it's like, it's not intimate as in with your own life partner. Assuming you're lucky enough to have a life partner. I am. So I think of it in those terms. But it's still intimate in the sense that you're going to share things with that person, like personal stuff, things that, because band life is typically more than just a hobby. For most of us, it is a hobby, but it's a hobby that involves so much more. We need to plan aspects of our lives together, which even, dare I say, transgresses over to our life partner plans. So a band relationship is you're in a very close relationship with 3 to 4 other oftentimes same gender people, but at the same time you're in a relationship with your often not same gender partner, and it becomes complex because they all need to coincide with each other, and each of those individuals typically will have partners as well. So a band relationship dynamic is not you and me figuring out what you and me need to get figured out. It's you, me, and often up to 8 other people whose destinies need to somehow intertwine into a harmonious outcome.
I think this
is complex.
I think that definitely exists. What you're describing, it definitely exists. But if you go back to basics in the beginning, like in the infant stages of it, and you consult with everybody and you say, listen, this is what the planned trajectory is. This is what me as the person who's spearheading it wants to see.
Yes.
This is the path.
Yeah.
At any given time, if I call you up 4 years from now, and like anything can happen in those 4 years, but if I call you up 4 years from now and say, listen, we have opportunity to go to this place, and this place for like a month. You come back to me in the beginning and you say, right, I'm in for it. I've discussed it with whoever my partner is I need to discuss that with, and that's it. You know, like you come to that agreement and that understanding much earlier in the whole spectrum of things.
Yes.
If 4 years from that agreement up until those 4 years down the line, there needs to be an open channel there. It's like, are you still here for this?
Yeah.
Are you still here for that? You need to keep checking up on that and keep that constant, because
I think this is what band daddy really comes down to. It's like, sorry, I'm using that phrase, band daddy.
It's so dirty.
But it's like, someone has to be the head of the table, so to speak.
Yeah.
And in a traditional family environment, you have like, daddy sits at the head of the table and he initiates grace, blah. Okay, it's very traditional, what, it doesn't matter. But you know what I'm getting at. Someone needs to be the head of the household, head of the table.
Yeah.
So
a leader.
So to speak. That's why I call band daddy, because every band has at least one band daddy.
I'm just going to stop using the word daddy.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Band dad.
Yeah, band dad. That actually sounds cooler.
It sounds way cooler than band daddy. Band daddy sounds like some crazy kink from
Well, I think, look,
website.
we've already been sort of wattling away for over 20 minutes on this. So I think let's maybe formulate how we're going to unpack the next phase. We've established here the complexity of band relationship dynamics, the fact that it's more than just one or two people. It's easier when it's two people. But when it branches out to 5+, it gets very complex and things change and shift constantly. So I think perhaps in the next episode, let's really dig open and try and understand. So what does that mean? I mean, what you say is true. One should have, firstly, kind of like a master plan set out right from the onset. Everyone needs to be committed to that master plan. And secondly, what you say is also true. You need to be constantly up to date with how everybody ties into that master plan, how they feel about the master plan, and how the master plan reflects back on their own individual situation at that time.
Yes.
Which is constantly changing.
Forever changing, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a perpetual cycle that you need to be in the know about.
Yeah.
You can't ignore that.
And to make it even more tricky, the band has a life of its own and needs of its own, which are also constantly changing.
This is true.
So, when you have someone who's involved in this project and they've become a part of its life force, but their unique situation has changed, maybe not for the positive for the band. Now, the band itself starts to assert pressure and say, but how is the band going to change if this person's no longer part of the equation?
I can talk about that.
We're gonna.
I can talk about that for days.
Yeah, well, we do have another episode that we can...
No, we don't. Let's just assume the next episode got shit canned, and we'll be back next week anyway.
All right.
Anyway, thanks so much for listening, guys. Please check out SoundVaaibs on Blended Podcasts all over the socials. Facebook, Apple, I'm pretty sure it's everywhere now.
Everywhere.
It's got to be.
I was listening on Spotify just recently.
Fantastic.
I just signed up for a premium Spotify. It's
Did
amazing.
you?
Yeah.
About damn time.
Loving it.
It's amazing. It's a great tool. But we'll talk about Spotify another time. Anyway, thanks so much for listening, guys. Please check us out on all the socials, whatever have you. If you have some feedback, please send your messages and your mails and all that good shit, and we will catch you in the next episode.
Quiet bananas. Tot ziens.
Oh man, please. Stop. Thank you so much for listening to us ramble on about all things music and sound here on SoundVaaibs, produced with the generous assistance of Blended Podcasts, brought to you by Blended Audio.